Welcome to Spark and Scale, the show for higher ed leaders learning, experimenting, and evolving how we shape our future. I'm your host, Mickey Baines. Come and join me. It's time to get started. Welcome back. Another episode of Spark and Scale. This is one I think we've been waiting 4 weeks to make this happen. A lot of things have happened in my life and my world over the last few weeks. A lot's happened in Ardis' world over the last several weeks, maybe a couple of months for him, as life in the world of higher ed and enrollment technology and AI and CRM and all those things, as that progresses, changes happen. And both of our lives. Ardis Kadiu, welcome to Spark and Scale. For those who don't know Ardis, I don't know why you don't know him. You should. The founder and former CEO of Element451, now on the board there for Element, and has a couple of new ventures that he's launched just in the past month. Ardis, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Mickey. This is it's great, and congrats to you on the news on Kennedy and Co. I think that's really, you guys came out of the year with a bang. So it's
that's right. Now we have to follow through with it. All right, you start the year on this high note. You got to be sure you stay on the high note. You don't want to fall down. So, Ardis, you and I have known each other for 6 years, something. It's a long time.
Yes.
I think this is the first time we've been on a podcast together, though.
I think so. Yeah. It took 6 years.
I don't know why. But I'm glad we're together on the podcast finally. We're going to dive in and talk a little about all the work you did and building and launching Element451 as, at the time, the newest platform in the higher ed enrollment space. Might still be the newest platform there, in the higher ed space. Want to dive in and talk a little bit about the ideas it took once you had it launched to grow it to where it is today, and some of those initiatives to scale that. And then let's dive in and talk more about the new efforts and initiatives you've launched. And maybe also let's hit into some trends in higher education specifically. What are we going to see in the future? There's so much talk about AI. I talk about it. You talk about it. 3,422 other people are talking about AI in higher education. So let's bring our minds together and maybe uncover some things that we want this audience to know about and hear about. So before we get into that, let's dive in. So how old is Element now? Is it 5 years?
No, Element started in 2018.
What?
Yeah.
So 8 years.
Incorporated in January 2018. Yep.
So 8 years is even better for this first question, because this was the first product. And, I worked with AI to, let's get some good questions for Ardis. And it said, what was the first question it had in here? It was one of the first AI-rooted CRMs. And I'm going to say, I think it's the first. I don't want to say one of. I think it was the first. So if you're incorporating in 2018, ChatGPT didn't really become public until 2023?
Yeah.
That's still 5 years ahead of it. How did you know that you needed to root this product in AI that early on?
Yeah. Well, when we started, it was all around marketing automation. So we're trying to solve some problems for ourselves. And Element has its roots in marketing, and it was prior to marketing agency that I started in. So we were trying to solve this problem of how do we reach out students and how do we know what students to reach out to better? So it was all about predictive modeling at the time. It was not called the generative AI era. So it was more around machine learning and kind of the old school AI, I guess. I don't know if if they be considered that way. So we were doing a lot of work around figuring out like what were the engagement scores, what was the propensity for students to apply to kind of, be admitted, and so on and so forth. So we had baked a lot of that stuff even back then.
Perfect. And when you expanded upon that and you added Bolt and all the other components that you have to it, how did you really determine what was most important to add to the product as you scaled and grew the product? What was the process like to say, okay, here's 15 things we could do. Here's the 5 we realistically can put together and launch in our next, wave of the roadmap?
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you're a product manager and if somebody's kind of worked on the product management side, you have so many different inputs, right? And your customers are one of those, or your partners are another, the market is another. There's a competitor that pops up and says, hey, I have this feature. So there's like a million different things that you can work on. So the really successful ones are the ones like that, like I used to tell my team that we're just as successful if we're going to say no to a lot of different things and kind of stay focused. So it's very, very hard to do that. But when you think about like a CRM in higher education and you think about kind of what we were doing around AI, our whole notion was how do we innovate as fast as possible, right? So this idea of innovation was really at the core of everything that we did. And it really was about the identity that we took on, right? We were considered, and we're still considered, like the innovative company, the innovative CRM. So the innovation part was really, really important. But then, how do we increase the surface area around managing that student journey, right? So we started in enrollment and marketing, and then we kind of expand in student success, and we'll kind of expand in kind of the advancement area as well. But that was the vision, right? And when you think about like, well, how do you think about AI? It was really a continuation of jobs to be done. So like what do we need to do and how do we get that outcome, through technology? So that was the mission, but it wasn't necessarily that we want to build this feature and we want to build this capability and let's just go ahead and like we had like a really long process of doing it. It was mostly around, how can we make something better and faster, a process that you can do manually, maybe automate that process. And in a lot of cases, what we saw was that, content creation and AI became really, really important to what we were doing. We started the process really early on at automating content creation, automating engagement, automating the insights around that. And now AI was perfect to do a lot of the content creation. So it kind of fell in, right? We needed to do that. And with Ballbot and everything else. So ChatGPT moment happened. We were the first ones to kind of start using those APIs because we saw that, holy shit, now you can have this natural conversation and you can actually get content that's really, really good, and you can have the agents and the AI actually communicate with the students, making that better, faster, easier, for those engagements. So it was kind of if you follow I don't know if you go to product, if you're a product manager, it's jobs to be done, right? It's like we cared about the job and the outcome rather than the tech itself.
So as you describe that timing, as you think about very early on, you're talking machine learning and then the generative AI coming around with ChatGPT, you were on a path. You didn't necessarily know that direction maybe in 2018, and then OpenAI opens a door. And I'm saying this because the word I would use to describe it is fortunate, not lucky, because you were on a path. Luck had nothing to do with that. You had some very intentional path that made it created a natural opportunity to leverage that. I think it's a great story. I think it's good for people to hear that and to understand kind of where it started and see that evolution as you continue to grow and scale. It's not just use cases. There are technical things you're adding in. I like the idea here from the product management side of finding the problems and figuring out how do we add on to this piece of technology to help solve that problem. So I'm going to ask what could be considered a loaded question. So feel free to pause and take a moment as you think about how to answer this. When you think about the ability to connect with our market, where did leadership behavior, not technology, but leadership, people behavior, where did that slow things down in your ability to scale and grow?
Yeah. So I can answer that a number of different ways, but one of the things that we started in higher education, right? So higher ed was that's all I knew. And we became a little bit more mission oriented, right? So higher ed is not known for innovation, and usually a lot of software that's getting built or a lot of innovative software, they traditionally do not get built in ed tech. They get built in other industries, and then the technology comes in ed tech, and especially higher education where the market is very small. It takes a really long time to get through to the institutions. Maybe the sales cycles are 6 months at a very minimum, but then 9 to 12 months if you're lucky. So things can get slowed down. And if you're building something that you want, that's very cutting edge, you don't build it for higher ed. So higher ed has had traditionally a very, like it's been served very badly by technology. So you can see that you don't bring innovation in it. Innovation happens somewhere else. 2, 3 years later, maybe 5 years later, you bring some of that in there, but it's an opportunity cost for founders. So you don't see a lot of founders building in it. Well, I guess I was like dumb and stupid, or I don't even know, like, or maybe mission oriented, and I kind of stuck around with it. So the parts that make it, really, but what is really good about higher ed is that once that institution and once those leaders trust you, and once you're there, then it's really, really difficult to kind of rip that apart. So they become very good, fans of you, and so on and so forth. So as long as you solve that problem, where leadership is like slows things down, and the higher ed generally is around procurement process, and things that, sometimes we would buy a piece of software. You're a leader in your company, like and you would buy a piece of software. They can be a $50,000 purchase or a year, and within a week, like, we make a decision and we just buy it, right? And because we know that the speed of the business that needs to be innovated. However, in higher ed, there is a lot of those gaps, or there's a lot of those blockers. So it made it really difficult for us to have conversations around innovation and breakthrough. But now that Element is at a larger scale, it makes it really hard for other competitors to kind of come in and say, okay, we're going to make something better or easier. And that's why you see it with, of course, we can say Slate, for example, like, they've been around for a really long time. They're the de facto CRM. Are they the prettiest or the best? No, of course not. Like, but are they good enough? Like, yeah, people say, okay, it's good enough. Like, I don't want to change. And that's the biggest issue that I see, is this notion that we can't change. Like, we don't want to disturb anything. With AI now, though, it's actually a you know it's an accelerant of that change, and a lot of leaders are finding themselves in this conundrum. Is like, well, I know that I need to do better. I'm seeing everything that's happening, and AI is an accelerant, and it's actually a new technology that is kind of, the promise is just so great that you can't just stay on the old way of your SaaS platforms or your SaaS business. You have to kind of move it to an AI first solutions for a lot of different things. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
It does. It does.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting. You ending that saying you can't stay on the SaaS products you've always had. In higher ed, we can say you can't always stay on the on-premise products that you still have. Like, how many of our clients have on-premise technology still? A
Yeah,
number.
it's
A
crazy,
number.
right? It's
So we're
like,
not even talking staying on a
yeah,
SaaS product. We have folks staying on-premise, which has been a trend to move off of for 20 years. And we're still having, some certain big products out there have had on-premise products well beyond their expected lifetime. And so that's the accelerant piece stands out to me for sure. And it reminds me of a something that Jim Collins wrote about in the book Good to Great, because that's a 20-year-old book, or a little more than 20-year-old maybe. And as he was writing that book, they were talking about, well, what is the internet, and what does the internet have to do with the business? Where does this fall in here? And it's like, the internet is an accelerant. It's an enabler to help you do the work. It's not a component in and of itself. It's just an enabler to help you better connect and do your work. It's exactly what AI is. And because of that part of his book, when people ask me about AI, I said, you can't think of AI as technology any more than you think about the internet as technology. It is a way that we work. It is the way that we do our work. That's what I want folks to think about in terms of AI. Then we can better understand how the technology helps us do that. But it's not just a piece of technology or pieces of technology. It's a new way to do things.
yeah. A
So I
lot
think
of a
that's
lot of
really cool.
times it's compared to also electricity as well. So, like, the change to electricity. So AI is basically, when electricity came into our homes, like, you needed to rethink a lot of processes, a lot of things, right? A lot of things got invented, new ways of doing it through electrification. So and cities got, new infrastructure, new cities, everything. So with AI, you're introducing intelligence now, right? This token creation, this intelligence is now, it's like rather than doing it, the old way, which you have very, software or humans making decisions, or decisions being baked into software as templated, right? Now you have AI actually acting and thinking on its own without the human actually taking those steps. So you have to rethink software, you have to rethink processes, you have to rethink everything in kind of this new way where agents and AI is at the core of it, like this intelligence layer, right? So just like electricity, you can't run like something that's mechanical that you have to run by hand. You need an electric motor, and electric motor you have to now. So all of those pieces need to be rethought now. Again, it's not necessarily just this. It's going to make us 10% better. It's going to improve us productivity. No, 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 no. It's rewriting the whole operating system, so to speak.
If you focus on this 10% improvement on productivity, then you will minimize its potential impact it can really have for your future.
Exactly. Exactly.
So as the founder of a company that's grown and scaled, we always like to call that's your baby. You've raised it up and grown it. And as Element prepares to announce shortly its new CEO, what was on the verge of coming to fruition that you can talk about for the product that you're most excited? And maybe also, I don't want to let that go because we're so close to doing X or having X. What might that be?
Yeah, so this notion of what we called agentic AI, we were the first ones to introduce it, in our products, and it was really hard, Mickey, to basically go to a school or go to someone and say, okay, agents and agentic AI, this thing is going to become real. Your agents are actually going to be your employees, and they're going to be answering questions, and they're going to be interacting with students. And by the way, you're going to have teams of them. And by the way, you don't need to hire more people now. You can. So that conversation was just so hard last year to have with people because they still thought about it as a productivity tool, right? It's get something better and productive. So where Element and what we've kind of done and announced is kind of this idea of agents that are proactive and kind of sitting in the background. And you're seeing, how that's being, like this notion of multi-agent and kind of proactive agents. You're seeing that in a lot of other software right now. You probably might have noticed that ChatGPT or even Claude or whatever, they have this notion now. It's like you can tell it, hey, remind me to do this thing or whatever, but it's still a reminder. And then if you've seen Pulse, I don't know, have you noticed Pulse or have you used Pulse from
I've not used
ChatGPT?
Pulse. No.
So Pulse is just it's a very small step towards proactivity. It essentially what it does, it looks at all your conversations that you've had, everything that you've had the past, few days and then it essentially kind of summarizes things or intents that you have, and it goes out, does some research, and then gives you new articles the next morning or gives you synthesized stuff around that and says, hey, last week you were like, for example, I or my rotator cuff or whatever. And so I was trying to do some exercise and things like that. And it kind of kept giving me back and saying, hey, you might want to think about this. This is some, new things that you might want to do. And like every day it was trying to kind of give me that. So this proactivity it was really great because I didn't have to think about it. It was proactive. It was looking at seeing what I did and then kind of, help me along to kind of fulfill those goals. So that was I mean, you can describe and say maybe that was a bad implementation or not if you haven't used it, but because it's so expensive in terms of tokens to run in the background, OpenAI doesn't have it available for everybody. It's only available for the high paid tiers, right, of ChatGPT. So when you think about like what we're building at Element is this proactive agents that are listening to everything that student is doing, and then it has different goals that the school gives it around things like, well, I want to drive this towards a completed application. I want to drive that student towards completing their classes. And then every day or I believe like every 5 minutes, you would just look at and respond to things. So that's the things that I was really excited about. We brought it to market and now is all about the adoption part. And as I left Element, like that was the big thing that, we're kind of very excited about to expand not just for enrollment, but like we had released it and we had put some artificial caps in it. So for example, like 1,000, you can enroll 1,000 students in the proactive stuff, but now it's like 10,000 and 100,000 or even unlimited, but it's expensive. AI goes down in terms of the cost of it, and kind of you're going to see a lot of this proactive stuff. And again, we're at the first ones to do it. Uh, you're going to see that become, the adoption. You're going to see that this 2026 will be more of the year of the adoption part.
And I think that's a great example. Thanks for sharing that, because that whole behind the scenes, I think that is a whole new way that we will experience. And to an extent, as a consumer of a brand who has it in the background, won't know it, but it will make it'll create a lot of conveniences for us. So I want to transition a little bit and talk a little bit about what's new for Ardis. You have announced the AI Idea Lab, and is it Andy?
Andy, yes, Andy AI. Yep.
So let's talk about each of them, what those initiatives are, what you'll be doing with them.
Yeah. So AI Idea Lab, I put together the AI Idea Lab as a holdco, and also one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we have we're implementing agents and kind of this agentic AI in a lot of different areas, right? And AI Idea Lab is the holdco for a portfolio of companies that will have around agents to solve different problems in different verticals. So we don't want to be kind of limited to just one and stay that one, of course, but
Yes.
the opportunity is there. So that's AI Idea Lab, and the first project and the first kind of company that's in the portfolio of AI Idea Lab is Andy AI. And Andy AI it's just so cool because this idea of, first of all, Andy AI is we were kind of changing the evolution of what it is. But think about it as the idea came to me when I wanted to give my kids ChatGPT, but ChatGPT doesn't really have, like, I couldn't see what they can do in ChatGPT, right? So I didn't know, like, I can see the conversations. I didn't know what the questions were they were asking. And, I'm like, oh man, there's got to be a better way, like that parents can actually see what's happening with these very powerful AIs. And as every kid now needs to learn AI, needs to use it, there's not a lot of connection and visibility and trust around what the kids are doing and safety. So Andy AI started with just that idea. Like, we're going to give personal, ChatGPT like experience and personal assistance to kids, but connected and driven in a safe environment that parents can see and can figure out what they're doing. And that was the original idea for my kids. But as I was developing the idea, one of my really good friends, she's an executive at Starbucks on the HR side, and she travels a lot, right? She travels for work quite a bit. And, she has two twins, the same age as my son, Noah, 11 years old. And when we went on a trip together, she had a 4-page document with all of the things that they needed to do to hand off for just that 5 days that we were away to her babysitters, right? There was 6 babysitters that needed to kind of take over. And then they had soccer, they had dance, they had school, remember to pick up the cleats, do this, directions to different places. So it's crazy. And I saw that and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like, how you want to do this whole thing. And she was actually the operating system of the whole family and the coordination. So they kind of made sense for me for those two things to be together. So a personal assistant or a personal AI for kids, but with family interaction, but then most of it becomes organizational. So wouldn't it be amazing if now the platform can handle not just the interactions with the kids and also give them reminders, connect to calendars, be able to kind of give insights to parents on what's happening with their lives, and then be able to also open up and give others or caregivers a view onto their kid, that kid, so you can kind of give them slices or sharing different information around them, so you can hand off, so the babysitter can just get on their app and they can see, okay, Noah or River, they like these things, and I have to do this and this and this. So everything is kind of connected all together. So it becomes the family operating system that knows and remembers everything and kind of grows with the family the more you use it. So that's Andy in a nutshell. I know that I went a little bit longer there, but
That's okay. Well, you can see the excitement.
yeah,
That's why I want to talk about it, because I know you're really excited about it. And I will tell you, as you described it to me, my mind went in another, I won't say another vertical, but at a slightly shift to that. We talked before we recorded, how we're all into this higher ed space. Well, I'm thinking of even in K-12 space in the classroom as a
yeah,
classroom operating system,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Whether that could be K-12, it could be in higher ed, it could be the student school operating system in terms of my son who's got 6-7 classes in a year. What's happening across there? I see that some opportunity where you could replicate some of that functionality from a teacher's perspective, an advisor's
exactly,
perspective, to understand any student. I can even see, gosh, I'm going way off the rails here. If a whole school had this adopted, I'm thinking like a high school, and the guidance counselor, can you imagine seeing all these scenarios and alerts being raised that here's a student and here's the whole scenario. Let's see the whole, it's not just an issue with a class. It might be a combination of this little issue in this class, this little issue in this class, together adds up to a bigger issue. Let's see what's happening. What's the right context we see in that?
exactly,
Um, you know,
exactly. Yeah, yeah. I
and
mean,
because it's K-12, alerting parents. Imagine that, letting parents be involved and engaged in that in a way.
yeah.
A lot of opportunity.
That's
That's
if you look
exciting.
at our basically our thought process there is that we start with a family. We wanted to do a B2C or business to consumer app first because we have been a little bit kind of um, jaded by the B2B and the slow
Yep.
moving sales cycle.
Yes.
So the iteration process, we wanted to do that. And then that's actually on our roadmap. It's like
Okay.
this care share.
I
And
spoiled
so
it.
it's
You
like,
heard it here
how
first.
yeah, yeah. So that is on the roadmap, Mickey. And because we believe, look, this is a problem that when we're in higher ed and we have engagements with students and we talk about success and how they're doing in school and how do we interact with them, it's a lot more than just like how they're doing. You said it during classes. Now mental health has become such an important thing. Home, like the home life and how everything happens there becomes important. But then you think about like education even downstream. It's like it even starts like first grade or second grade, and they're going to have to use this AI tools. But how do the like where is the help that's coming with those students, right? Where is sometimes like the parenting doesn't even happen anymore. It's like there's just so much stuff that's happening that the kids and the parents don't get that opportunity. There is two family divorced or like single parent home. So there's just so much, and that those are the years that make a big difference in kids' education and kind of the upbringing and everything. So this becomes a much bigger opportunity for us to solve a bigger problem rather than just focusing on that higher ed years, which is great, but I needed to go downstream from there.
Yes, I think it's a great idea. Excited to see where you go with that. Now, I'm going to transition one more time. I'm going to bring us right back to higher ed. We talked a little bit about the growth and scaling of Element. I like where you're going with Andy AI, but I would say the common theme throughout has been AI. What do we need to know in the higher ed space in 2026? What should we be thinking about? And you maybe have already segued into that as you talked about the agents behind the scenes that you've been working on, and comparing that a little bit to the Pulse functionality in GPT. So, what else, beyond that, or maybe expand upon that? What should we be thinking about and focused on from an enrollment management, student success perspective in higher ed this year?
Yeah, I mean, so when you think about, from an AI perspective, where we are right now, there is with agents and kind of the capabilities. Over the last, I would say, I took a few weeks off, yeah, obviously. I couldn't take more than that off after Element in December. But then coming back into January, I started to code again and started to kind of have hands-on keyboard again with AIs. And one of the things that has amazed me is how productive and how far agents have come, specifically right now in the coding area, but also how they're getting used in other, like for example, Claude Cowork and a few others tools that I don't know if your audience knows about or not. But what makes it all possible right now is that agentic AI has become 26 is kind of, it's going to be the GPT moment again for the agentic AI world. And we're seeing these agents be able to run longer tasks, and basically the models are become so good that they're able to do longer tasks. They have to use much more many tools and complete workflows end to end, which would have been impossible even 2 months ago. So if you map that into higher education and you say, well, how does that affect higher ed? You're now thinking about transformative workflows that would have taken humans a long time to accomplish. These agents can now do overnight or maybe in just a couple hours. They are able to kind of accomplish things that were maybe impossible before at the scale. So now you can have thousands or hundreds of thousands of agents do this outreach and do data analysis, whatever it is. So when you think about that work and you think about higher ed, I'm talking about just from the administrative side and the engagement side right now, right? That kind of transforms, and higher ed has an opportunity, just like every other industry has an opportunity to, providing their product and their service to the students, right? The product and service can be much cheaper now because they don't have to hire, 10 people. They can do it in 5. The service can be much faster and can be much more personalized as well. So that's the opportunity that kind of this brings in. However, I'm not really sure how schools are going to be able to deliver that because their models are the models are very difficult, and very rarely do we disrupt ourselves. I would say 2026. I mean, I don't know, man. It's an opportunity, I would say, for schools and those forward-thinking leaders to rethink like how they're delivering their product and what the cost is and what the value is, versus, well, we're incrementally going to try to reduce that cost, that 10% productivity, which never works out. I don't know. How does that, I don't know.
Yes.
What do you think,
Well, I
Mickey?
mean, it gets my mind thinking a little bit when you said this, when you used a number that I hadn't thought about, thousands of agents. And it made me wonder, like, will a school ever have one agent per student? So a student kind of has their own agent maybe behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that agent is now serving the capacity of a lot of what would have been multiple individuals to kind of help support that student, but also has the information, the speed, and the ability to say, hey, this is going to be a problem, not 2 weeks ago this was a problem and now we're ready to talk about it. So that, but I hadn't thought about an agent per student until you said, it's like, wow, when you think about agents in that quantity, if you can train an agent to say, we need to have an agent per student and let that agent help build the other agents,
Yeah. Right.
so that here's this. And there's, I'd say, some potential there. I don't know about the disruption in terms of that. That is a hard thing. Take AI out of it. Just say disruption. Hard to, for anyone individually, for most people individually, most companies, organizations, higher ed institutions, maybe especially, to say we want to self disrupt. Like that's a hard thing to do. I suspect we'll find some folks that are more in a corner than others that open their minds to other possibilities, to say we have to cut costs dramatically. How are we going to do that? For once, over the 6 years ago, 4 years ago, that wasn't necessarily an option to consider this as a scenario to cut costs. This might be one of those areas where if we're going to stay alive, we have to embrace something different, more radically
Yeah.
different than we would have in the past. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah. I
see some.
mean, when one of the things that you can think about as well is the actual product that higher ed is delivering, and that's changing, right? The value of that product is changing. Used to be that the product was actually the learning process or the outcome and the knowledge transfer, right? The knowledge transfer was the product, and of course you got a degree of it, so you can have some credibility or some essentially validation, right? So you had validation, and then you had knowledge transfer, and then you had community, right? The community was the part that higher ed was really good at. and kind of this idea generation. And so it became a place for discourse where new ideas kind of came to light, and so on and so forth. Well, guess what? Like AI makes the knowledge transfer cheap and inexpensive, or maybe free now. So you don't need that anymore. When you're thinking about the jobs, or the that of the future, well, we don't know what those are going to be, because if intelligence is really cheap or free, then what happens to that product? Like, what happens to us knowing something at that knowledge transfer? So that goes to zero. And then you start thinking about, well, how about credentials? It's like, well, companies are not going to care about credentials anymore, because at some point they're like, these AIs are, and even this year, they're going to be better than, any human out there, or smarter than any human. So it's like, why would I need a human to do that when I can have an AI, an agent? And then you start thinking about, okay, how about the community aspect? I don't think that's going to go away, but it's going to certainly impact how we think about the value of education, right? Like, what that's going to be like, what the product is going to be at the end, why students wouldn't want to come to your institution. Are they are they
Yes.
just getting a degree? So I don't know. I mean, those are questions that I've been thinking a lot about, as my kids are 11 and 13, and I'm like, holy shit, I have no idea what they're going to go to school for.
I've got an 18-year-old now who reminds me daily, because he's been 18 for 2 weeks, but reminds me daily I'm an adult now.
Yeah.
But second, who's in the process of waiting on two more decisions, application decisions or admission decisions, to make his choice of where he wants to enroll. And I think about that a lot for him. My younger daughter is 13, so just ahead of your 11-year-old, and it is very interesting to see. You talk about the value of education, the value of knowledge in general. What I read across other industries is this is the year, and maybe next year as well, where you start to see a much more rapid shift in biomedical research that's happening as we understand medicine and approaches to sickness, disease, that we're going to find a lot of discoveries there that AI is going to really accelerate understanding and knowledge around. I think there's going to be some shift that happens there because of that. But just thinking about it, all the ways that knowledge starts to change, and I think there's a lot that we don't know. We see some potential paths forming, but we don't necessarily know the endpoint yet, what that really looks like, and that will certainly provide some challenges and for institutions moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right, I'm going to end this with a question I just started asking folks. You know, my company was just acquired by another company, but one of the things that I always appreciated on our website from our company is, if you were interested in a job and you went to apply, we ask you to list fun facts on our website, things about you that we don't know we should know. So, Ardis, one fun fact about you that folks won't know.
A fun fact that folks don't know. I mean, a lot of folks think that I haven't, like, I'm a very technical person. So, like, so I tell people right now, it's like, hey, I'm coding again. And they're like, they get surprised. They're like, what do you mean? Like, do you actually, like, are hands on keyboard? Like, are you sure? Like, that's because I've been on the CEO side, and, like, that's one of the things, and
Yes.
I enjoy that a lot. I don't know if there's I've been such a workaholic over the last decade plus, Mickey, that it's like my identity and the work and family have kind of blended together. That there's just been not a lot of things that folks don't know about me right now, because I've been pretty public about things. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, hands on keyboard, I knew a little bit. You mentioned it here in our conversation, to think of that when you say it in this context. It's like, okay, here we're talking programming, we're talking development, real technical pieces. So I think that's just a good reminder. You don't necessarily have to be a business person to be the CEO of a company. You can have an idea, build that idea, and in a founder-led environment, in technology especially, that's very often the founder doing a lot of that technical work. And so it gives you some different insights for sure, right? As you're prioritizing product features and listening to product managers out there, kind of make recommendations and to understand more clearly what that type of product shift or new feature looks like or takes to bring to fruition. Sure, I'm sure that gives you much more insight than if I were the one making that decision with a company, right? You don't want me making that decision without some type of knowledge, for sure. Well, thank you for sharing that. Ardis, thank you for joining me for this episode. We covered a lot of topics. I think we really dove into some good ideas for the future. I'm really excited again to see where you go with Andy AI as you continue to grow that, and just to follow your journey. You said it there at the end, and it resonates with me, not near as much as you're probably going to encounter it for yourself, but spending the last 10 years creating this idea, turning this idea into something that's real, and then a company and growing and scaling, and what that does and the effort it takes to do professionally while also still maintaining a family. It's not an easy thing to do, because it was for so long, it was really became this blended life of everything you're trying to do. And now you're in a different role. And that's going to be a transition. And so I'm excited to see you share more about what that life is like as you kind of move from founder of a scaling company to founder of another startup and starting over and living with, now you've got kids that are 11 years old. And so keeping that in mind and how that helps you progress with the family and grow the family. So I'm excited to see where that goes.
Certainly, no meetings helps a lot. So I love that part of it.
I was hoping to have fewer meetings in our transition, and that hasn't happened yet. So I very much agree with that. Looking forward to the day with fewer meetings.
No employees, Mickey. I think that's the goal. Well, awesome. It's been great. It's been great, kind of for our first time since we know each other, to be on the same podcast. I appreciate it, and good luck with your new venture as well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it. Yes. Everyone else, thank you for joining us for another episode of Spark and Scale. We look forward to having you join us. I think it's against the law for me not to say this, but if you enjoy the episode, please like and subscribe. It helps us out. It gets more folks in front of these episodes so they can learn with us all. Thank you again for watching.